Saludos, señores y señoras. How do you summarize a year in 30 minutes or even an hour? Well, that's what I've tried to do. And in this video, which is basically reflecting on 1 year living in Argentina, I think this is gonna be interesting for anyone who is either looking to become a digital nomad or is a digital nomad but maybe wants to try living in Argentina, or someone who just is thinking about, well, what would it be like to completely change where I live for a longer time, immerse yourself in a new culture, in a new language, with new people, new friends, try to restart your life from ground zero. So without any further ado, let's get into the year reflection, 1 year reflections from living in Argentina. Let's go. Before we dive,
La flecha ya está en el aire. La flecha ya está en el aire.
so hello, my dear friend, or enemy for that matter, but hopefully mostly friends are gonna be watching this. I'm here sitting in Argentina, San Marcos, Córdoba, in the province of Córdoba, and today I'm celebrating the anniversary of 1 year in Argentina. You're gonna hear stories like how I almost didn't make it to my flight to come here, how I got robbed in the end of my first month in Buenos Aires and I woke up after 2 days not knowing what happened, how I moved to this little weird kind of hippie town and I've lived here for the last 6 months. Also stories of how I almost got punched on the game between Argentina and Poland during the Mundial group phase. You also hear lessons like what it's like to live here, what's the culture, what are the differences, what are the similarities, what's it like, what does it mean to be an Argentinian, what are history, why do they do some things differently, and why the life looks the way it looks here. So how did it all start? So it started in general many years ago with the idea of going to Argentina and moving there, but then I was stopped by the pandemic and I was waiting in Poland, and finally in April last year the Argentinian government opened the borders and consequently the flights, so you were able to finally enter Argentina as a foreigner. And so when I saw that, I immediately, I think after a couple of weeks of thinking about it, just thinking when and what, I bought the tickets for the end of June. And the flight was actually, the idea was that in Rome I had friends, so I bought the flight from Poland to Rome, and then a few days later, I think 3 days later, I had the flight from Rome to Buenos Aires, so it was kind of double, so I could see some Rome and meet my friends, hang out with them. So I went for the first flight, it was the Wizz Air, so the cheap airlines on the 25th to fly from Warsaw to Rome. And at first the flight got delayed, I think once, then it got delayed second time, and then finally they canceled the flight. So then I tried to figure out what's going on and when are we gonna fly, what's about the rebooking, and then I figured out that basically Wizz Air's been encountering some big problems, I think with staffing and some other stuff, and they've been canceling flights for the past couple of weeks, for the previous couple of weeks. So people told me that it's maybe actually uncertain whether they will rebook it, but they wouldn't trust whether I would fly. And since I had the second one and I couldn't miss the second one because it was quite a lot of money to pay, so I decided to not trust Wizz Air, tried to maybe get my money back later, and bought a second flight from south of Poland to Rome the next day morning. It was like actually the last seat. So I went there the next day. I flew finally. I made it to Rome. I had, I think, a couple of days to spend there with my friends, and then finally on 24th, I flew to Buenos Aires. Here you have Argentina. You see, this is this big ass block. That's as big as the whole Europe. So here you have Buenos Aires at the coast. The interesting thing about Buenos Aires is actually that it's not, I thought that it's an Atlantic, but actually this is a river still. Atlantic maybe begins, I think, like here. But here the water is, and the stream and everything is like the river, the Paraná River, or Rio La Plata actually it's called there, because there are two rivers that join here. like here, this one, and this one. This one is River Uruguay, and this one is River... Basically, the water actually sucks here. It's not nice, and I heard it's kind of toxic. It's not a good idea to swim there. So this is Buenos Aires. Rosario is on the riverside. It's on the way between Buenos Aires and Córdoba, so that's where I went for the final. And then you have Córdoba here. So if you see Córdoba is kind of like, I say north, but actually this is north. Argentina is kind of like, no, Córdoba is kind of like northwest, but not like super north still. And San Marcos is here. So you see, it's like that part is San Marcos, and this is all like the province of Córdoba. If you see here, province here is the province of Córdoba. It's close to Santa Fe, so Rosario is Santa Fe province. In Buenos Aires, somewhere in between my first month, I basically reconnected with my longtime friend I met in like 7 years ago on a other travel here in South America, in Salta, and he's been living in Buenos Aires for some time now, and we're reconnected. We met a bunch of times. A really cool guy. And this one night at the end of the first month, so I think, yeah, it was like end of July, we went out for a beer, like on Wednesday, and to this really popular area, especially for tourists and people with money, Buenos Aires, Palermo, like this rich and expat area. And so we went there for beers. Since it was Wednesday, there wasn't so much going on, so yeah, we sat down, and I think we were like halfway through our beers, and then I don't know if me or he started talking with these girls across the table, and they came over, and then I think very soon the guys from the bar, they came over and they said that, you know, they are closing, so we gotta kind of go away, so politely basically kicking us out because we cannot be staying there. And so we went out and we were thinking on what to do. So we went on the street, we tried to looking for some, there were clubs, things like that, but since it was Wednesday, like we had the feeling that there isn't that much going on, and it's pretty expensive. I didn't feel like the vibe, so I checked my phone and I actually realized it's like 15 minutes walking, maybe 20 to my house, where I was renting. So I suggested everyone, hey, let's go to my house, I have wine, I have weed, I have music. And we bought beers and we went on the way. And then we went out to my apartment. I remember entering the house, and then in a few moments I went to the balcony because one of the girls went there to check up on her and just talk, and I went there, and that's the last thing I remember. And then I remember waking up, not really knowing what's going on. There was no, like, I didn't have any electronics or time, so I went out to look for this friend. I knew that where he was working, and on the way I asked some woman about the time. She told me I think it's like 5 p.m. And then I don't know why I asked like what day, so I'm kind of confused, and she said Friday. So I was like, oh shit, so I basically slept for like almost 2 days, like at 1 a.m. on Wednesday, Thursday, and then 5 p.m. Friday. Yeah, that was the beginning of the next 2 months of just utter chaos, of just getting thrown, of like, because I lost all my valuable electronics, so like my phone, 2 my phones, because one of them I borrowed to this friend. I had my laptop, my headphones, my other headphones, my vaporizer. There was a lot of like electronics that they stole. Because they also stole my phone, I lost my SIM card and I couldn't log into any of my Google accounts, so I was kind of like unable to contact most people, do anything. They also stole $4,000, which was all my like kind of safety net to live here. So I had only just a couple $300 left on my bank account. So that was fun. And during that time I also had to, like talk, figure out with the detectives, maybe try to find them. We went to the bar, we explained, so I worked with detectives, so it was also interesting time of learning about Argentinians' federal police system of how it works, how well it works. There was even like a romance with a federal detective. That was like kind of the next 2 months was just basically me trying to get back on the feet, figure out what's up, buy a new laptop, borrow some money. And it was really also challenging because it was like my first month and I had to figure it out all in Spanish because like obviously I think there was one guy who spoke English, but that was like at the end of the case. He was just translating some documents when I was telling him what I lost. But generally I had to like explain the situation in Spanish roughly, so that was also a big challenge. I knew I had to escape Buenos Aires because there's no way I'm gonna like recuperate my sense of like peace and calm and just kind of stability there, because as I said, Buenos Aires is amazing. I think one of the lessons is that I would say it's like it's both underrated it's underrated I think for like foreigners, so like for people from like Europe or States or Asia. I think it's incredible to see this city. I think it's both similar to huge cities in Europe or States probably, but at the same time much different, more crazy. So I think on that level it's underrated, but then I think it's overrated for life. Like if you want to move to Argentina, for now my conclusion is that there are much better places to live. But obviously everyone's different. But even if you think big city, I think for example Cordoba, the capital of Cordoba, is much more manageable. Cost of living is lower, it's closer, everything. I think it's more beautiful too, much less traffic, the climate's better. So yeah, somewhere at the end of this third month I decided to try, change the scenery. So I went first to Cordoba capital, and my idea was to just look for some smaller place, town, small city or something like that, where I could just kind of lay down for a few months and just get my head straight, focus on work, reduce my expenses so I can save up some money. So I went to Cordoba capital, I stayed some in hostels, I went to Oktoberfest, which was crazy, near Cordoba. There's this town called Villa General Belgrano, which was a lot of Germans went there, both the generals, when they were escaping like the Second World War. So they do now every year in October, they do the same way in like Munich, they do there in near Cordoba capital, they do this festival once a year, like I think the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I went for one day. It's pretty cool, just a lot of beer and and there's people, but not that many. So definitely something to check out. Maybe I will return one more time to see if I can stay there for a night, maybe stay 2 days, see like what's the full spectrum of the party. I only kind of like dip my toe. So yeah, I was in Cordoba. I was looking to stay somewhere again. I was asking around, and as I said, it doesn't work here so well to like rent something fast. And locally you need contacts and still you need like patience with that. So I also started looking at Airbnb, and I finally found this house basically in San Marcos Sierra, so that's the place. And yeah, I asked a couple of friends there in Argentina what they think about San Marcos, what is it, and they said, oh no, it's beautiful, it's an incredible place, it's this hippie place, this hippie town. No, I was just like, fuck it, and I booked it looked cool, and it looked like had internet and all that stuff, had a garden, so I was like, whatever, I would just try this for a month and see what's up. So I've lived here more than 6 months, I think 6-7 months now, so I think I kind of like it. It's definitely an interesting place. It's this weird mix of like people who, like these hippies who moved like 40 years ago, like the woman who's renting my house. There's also like travelers, like much with backpacks or that are making like artisanal things, like especially Argentinians who are like just basically traveling around Argentina, living on the road, and they pass by because it's like this famous town too for this kind of people. For international, less so. For tourists, not really. For local tourism, yes, especially like big weekends, like long weekends, or the summer, like January, February, December. It gets huge here. Normally, it's a very small town, like I think 6,000-7,000 people maybe live here. It's pretty spread out and incredible nature. Like everything's super green here, and you have the mountains clear, the rivers, 2 rivers. Lots of birds, animals, horses, so it's very kind of wild. And then there's also like foreigners, like there's people from Netherlands, France who bought some houses here and they just basically moved here. Then you have a lot of people from Buenos Aires, from the capital, moving here with like their new started family with like kids. So it's kind of like a mix of everything. I think, but at the same time, I think it attracts certain types of people. So like, I think 99% of people have really good energy. Like there's, you say hello to everyone on the street, and it's very like, yeah, you meet people and it's easy to make friends, and people are like really positive and nice and open, and there's a lot of music and art here, and a lot of like this kind of, I would say, bohemian vibe around the town. And it's like kind of freedom and do whatever the hell you want and be yourself and dress however you want and do what you want, and there's people without shirts walking and people without shoes and wearing all kinds of things, singing, dancing. So yeah, it's definitely it's a cool mix. I liked it because it's a cool mix of like living in nature and having tranquility most of the time, but you want there is things going on always. Well, not always, but here now in winter, autumn less. But in general, there is like in the weekend you can go. There's bars open. People are in the plaza in the center. There is usually like the larger weekends, like longer weekends, like here in Argentina, often happens because they have like holidays. But here in Argentina, what's different than at least from Poland is that when they, for example, have like free day on Thursday, the government will give like Friday free so they can have like 4 days, or Tuesday is free so they will give Monday. So there's a lot of this like fin de semana larga, like 4 days, so people come here, and then there's like some concerts, dances, things going on, some cultural, some feria, like people selling like these handmade things like mates or clothes or food. And yeah, there's also really good food here, like homemade food, homemade lots of things, homemade like cheeses and eggs and really good quality, like you could say organic, but even without the label organic, because just there's no like industrial farming here. So basically, yeah, I moved here in October, and then in December came the finals of the Mundial finals. That was pretty crazy because Poland was in a group with Argentina, so I went to the game between Argentina and Poland here in the town. And by that time, I didn't really know that many people because I was just spending my time at home working. And I went there with this one friend I met, and I was the only guy with like a Polish flag and just supporting Poland. And I remember there was the penalty in the first half of Messi scoring against Poland, against Szczęsny, and Szczęsny defended the penalty, and I went in front. I don't know, it was like an instinct, in front of all the Argentinians in a bar, in front of the tele. It's like, yeah, motherfucker, what's up? And they all looked at me like they wanted to fucking kill me. Hopefully no one did, luckily. And then yeah, I went back to my table. Then there was like the halftime. I went out, and the guys were like, there were some guys saying like, hey, be careful man, and then I think just a few minutes after the second half, the Argentina scored, and the first goal, like all the bar ran up to my table and started screaming in my face. So that was fun, but so I was close to getting somewhere there. But the good part was like at the end of the match, I met a lot of friends, and I met one of the best friends who actually knew like half of the town, and yeah, we went for like the asado, which is the Argentinian barbecue, and then I met more people, and that started the whole December of party, because here, you know, it was a big fiesta. Like besides the first game, Argentina went on to win every game, and then they went to the final against France. And for the final, my friend, the guy I met, Ariel, suggested that we go to Rosario. He wants to paint. He's like a painter. Like he wants to paint
Pointing at the
Messi.
sky.
And while the game
And
is
already-
going on, it's finished.
Festeja.
The place
Look at
where
this.
everyone gathers.
Rosario
and
is
try to
actually
get
pretty
some
fucking
tips
good,
and
man.
just to
There you
have
can
fun
see, I'll
experiences.
show you,
So
it's
just went spontaneously
river
to
that looks like a
Rosario, which
fucking-
is actually Messi's
a
hometown.
sea.
A town, I would say it's
Rio
a city.
Parana,
It's I
so
think the second biggest city in Argentina.
Going to Ariel.
And it's a famous
See how it
drug
goes.
city, Rosario here. Like the most drug dealing and crime, it's Rosario. So we went to Rosario to a day before the final to basically figure out where we're gonna stay during the day. He's gonna like paint on the floor, and so we found a place near the monument, and then the next day we went early in the morning he started painting, and then I wanted to record this shit, and then my phone died and I didn't bring my camera, so in the end I didn't record any of the final almost. So that's the stupid part about me, so I need to be more prepared. But on the other hand, we watched the final in the like outside. There is this in this monument place, which is like the central place of Rosario. There is this Messi's bar. I think it's either partially owned or owned by his family or something like that. And near there's like this huge mural of Messi on this huge building. And then they had this big television to watch the final. Of course, you couldn't enter. Like that was reserved probably like a couple weeks before. But we were able to stay outside, like a lot of people, somewhere on trees, somewhere on fucking climbing on each other's back, and everyone was trying to see the game. And yeah, it was just a crazy roller coaster ride of like people first like, you know, just celebrating for 80 minutes, then they almost like dying and crying, and then again celebrating, and then again crying and dying, and then yeah, finally like when the end whistle and Argentina won, it was like, well, first it was like a calm before the storm, because yeah, first was like this small celebration there, but we were in a place where there was this bar, but there weren't more people in this plaza. But we knew that people are gonna gather there, like this was the place that all the city is gonna come to. So yeah, we hugged some people, and then we went quickly back to go finish painting, because the painting it's gonna probably would take like half more day or almost all day. So we went there, and I think in like half an hour to an hour, almost all the city came there, and it was like one of the craziest fucking days ever. We stayed like all day in the sun out there, everyone drinking around, people climbing traffic lights, climbing trees, fucking jumping, dancing, throwing things. It was crazy, but in general calm, like there wasn't like violence and things like that. It was good, and a lot of, I think Ariel made like I don't know, $100 or something in tips, and a lot of free beer, because he painted first Messi and then he painted Maradona. And so yeah, there was a lot of people just coming up to us and just celebrating with us, and I was just kind of protecting his space to make sure some like drunkards don't come and fuck up his thing or steal his money. So that was December. Then there was New Year's and Christmas. Christmas, actually, that's another lesson, is that it's not very Christian. I thought, not Christian, not very Catholic. I thought that Argentina is kind of like Poland, like very, very Catholic. But actually here, because I think it's also because it's summer here and not like winter where we are, so it don't really have the vibe to like sit at home with family. Here it's more like, yeah, you eat some dinner with family, but in general you just go fiesta. So it's all about like going out at night and just celebrating, dancing, and dancing, playing instruments, and drinking. That's basically like a Christmas here, and New Year's. New Year's kind of like everywhere. So then, yeah, in January I went basically back to Córdoba Capital, and then there was this festival, folklore festival in Jesus Maria, I think one of the biggest folklore festivals. So like folklore, like the traditional music here of the gauchos, like the old school music, traditional one. So I went there, met some cool guys, and managed to get into like last moment to the concert on like 2 a.m. because they didn't sell tickets, and at 2 or 1 a.m. I think they just opened for everyone. I was able to get to a concert of this one. I think one of the biggest folklore artists here, Chaqueño from South. And then, yeah, I think I came back to Capital in like 7 a.m. and a few days later I organized this spontaneous idea to visit my friends from Argentina who I met like 4 years before on a bicycle trip. They came back, and Rodrigo was celebrating his birthday in the south, you can see where, and I bought the tickets to fly from Córdoba to Neuquén, and here he was from Chipoleti. So Chipoleti is this town, city in actually Rio Negro. So you see here is actually the border of the provinces. This one is Rio Negro, and this is Neuquén. So I went there actually at 10 a.m. I had the flight. At 7 I came back to Córdoba Capital, and I managed to make it. So I stayed there a few days. I went back to south, to one of the more touristic areas of Argentina, which is, and also famous internationally, which is here, this part of Neuquén, which is called like the route of the road of 7 lakes, because there you have the 7 lakes. So you have San Martin, you have Junín here, and then you have the lakes, the San Carlos Bariloche, Villa Angostura. So this is all like this Route 40, pretty famous, that goes through the whole Argentina and South America. It's the Panamericana. And here I went to San Martin de los Andes. It's at the lake. Kind of looks like Alps in what do you say? In Europe. What happened is that I realized, I knew people told me that it's gonna be way more expensive there, but it was actually, I didn't really expect that it's gonna be double. The prices are gonna be basically double for everything, so for hostels, for food, for doing anything, for transport. So I realized, and I also still had to do work, so I realized I can't really do like the camping and like the slow travel, and then I also don't really have enough like money to just do like this crazy expensive part, like travel there with, you know, trying some kayaking, things like that. So I stayed a while in there, then I met a really cool girl, and I went back at some point to well, on the way I had one of the best adventures of this 1 year in Junín, the brother of this friend from Chipoleti. We went here to Lago Huechulafken, and here is one of the more famous volcanoes, Lanín, in Argentina. A lot of people go to, and I went to this camping here, and with like, there was like I think 10 of us, and they brought all the kinds of alcohol, food. We had chivo patagónico in asado, so like barbecued young goat, or buck actually you would say, I think, or a goat. I think it's a goat, just young goat. So yeah, we stayed there for like 3-4 days. We went horse riding. We had some LSD. It was beautiful in general that stay there. Oh, it was this Arica Galfu. Really cool, beautiful view in front of the volcano. Couldn't ask for a better place. And so yeah, then I went back and I stayed 1 month in Chipoleti, and then I came back to San Marcos and in March, and then since then I've been living here. So what I learned about the climate here is that basically you have around 10 good months here. Okay, I'm talking about the north, because if you go central, so where I went, like Neuquén or more south, that's basically climate like Poland, or then colder like Patagonia. Lots of wind, lots of cold. It's basically like summer for a few months, like May, June, July, August maybe, and then maybe some September, and then it gets like super cold and windy, and yeah, you don't want to be there. So that's also another lesson, that even though like Patagonia in the south is probably most popular as far as travel for people from abroad, then it's actually for life here, if you want to live, I don't think it's that great. As I said, it's much more expensive. I didn't like as much too, to be honest, the people there in the south, as much as I love here. So far Córdoba is my favorite province, but I have to get to know more. But Córdoba has like the best combination of like really open, positive people, great like dance, like cuarteto and music, great like climate. So here, yeah, you have basically like 10 months, you could say, of great weather. Only part of it is like really hot. Most of the time it's pretty like good mix, not too humid, not too dry. There's some rain, so it's not like super desertic. A beautiful landscape too. Mountains are not as high and huge as in like Patagonia, but they're also nice. Like you can go up and it's nice, green, and rivers and valleys and animals. And then cost of living here, it's much cheaper. It's, I think, not the cheapest. I think in the north there are some provinces that are cheaper, but here it's pretty damn cheap. And you can basically live. You can live definitely good or great, like for $1,000. For like 700 is okay, and then for 500 you can make it. So it's not gonna be like great conditions, but $500. That's like impossible even in Poland now. For 500 you will now maybe rent something. and then the other half for food. So yeah, south I would say is great to visit, and I definitely want to come back there to see more, to go more south, to just basically do some trekking, camping, things like that. Maybe do some fun like kayaking. You have a lot of things to do there in general if it's summer, and then in the winter you can go skiing. So that was the idea for this winter, but in the end I'm not gonna be able to do it. Maybe in the next years, because I don't have the funds. Because even though it's Argentina, the south, and it's winter, it's probably, from what I looked, it's not that much cheaper than going to skiing in Europe. So it's both like the rentals and like stays and everything. So it's really, and they have the same system like everywhere. Like high season in those places that are seasonal, like the prices skyrocket. And so the south I didn't like. I think that people are more closed, reserved. They're not that like curious about, like, because they're more used to tourism, again, the climate and everything. So I think what went well definitely this year is that I learned Spanish. That was actually a surprise how well I learned Spanish so far. I thought I would learn, but I really didn't know. And I also didn't really do any of the like Duolingo and learning grammar. I just learned by speaking. I made zero like additional effort. But the lesson I think is interesting that I learned from this is that it's pretty crazy. Well, I'm not sure if there's probably some degree of like talent and the fact that I spoke English really well, and if you learn like one foreign language, the others are easier. But I think in general it's crazy. I think how humans, if you like put yourself, like you force yourself, like you put yourself around the language, where you don't have really the option, so you don't have really the foreigners to talk in English, and Argentinians, like 99.9% of them don't speak English. That's truth. So if you come here, you gotta expect it. Maybe in Buenos Aires there's like some parts of Buenos Aires where you will see some like condensation of them, but if you like look population wise, maybe again some like very touristic spot in the south, but population-wise, I think like 99% safely don't speak English and don't even speak like the basics of it. So you're basically forced to either not be able to communicate and talk, or just try. So the lesson is like how crazy is that you can learn so fast if you just go to a place and you are like forced to both listen all the time because people speak, and then you're forced to speak even bad and retardedly, make mistakes. So, and that made me like realize how stupid is the whole system that we learn like in school, and a lot of the general like learning foreign languages is like you start grammar and then you learn to speak. But I think it's the reverse. I think it's just we got the order wrong. I think if you want to learn language fast, well, you actually first start with speaking. Master the idea of like being able to communicate, talk, even if it's not fully like grammatically correct, you don't do fully the good accents and shit like that, but people understand, you are able to sort of make use of it. Like, what's the purpose of language? You just want to like communicate, meet people, buy things, be able to get by, everyday life. So actually grammar is not that useful, and writing too. Writing is, I would say, I will want to learn writing eventually, but I'm pretty sure I will. But it's not that useful, to be honest, now, especially with like Google Translate and things like that. Like unless you like work and you need it for work, there's not that much use for writing, for learning to write Spanish in the beginning, Spanish or any foreign language that you would want to. So I would say the lessons there is that if you really want to learn certain language, just figure out how you could maybe go to that place where they speak this language for like 6 months. Surround yourself with locals. So don't try to do like the whole like what most people do, where they go to like Polish people go to like England, Netherlands, or whatever else, and they just stay with other Polish people, and then they never learn the language. Yeah, we are smart like that. Conservation of energy, like it takes a lot of energy at the beginning to like understand and then be able to communicate. So you need to sort of like have no other way in a way, I would say. And you will see like how amazingly fast you will learn. I think most people would. So if you want to learn, I don't know, German, go to Germany for a few months, 6 months. If you want to learn Spanish, go to Spain or South America. If you want to go Russia, go to Russia. If you want to go learn, I don't know what else, Italian, go to Italy. I would say probably like 3 months in a country will give you as much as probably like a couple of years of studying it. Or at least 1 year of studying it. I think it's probably like 3, 5, or 10 times more effective. I made, I think, a lot of friendships, even weaker and stronger, but I think I have contacts now in both Buenos Aires, in Cabo de Córdoba, and here, like, there are different ways where I have, I think, a small base of contacts, like not everywhere, of course, in Argentina, but and here in San Marcos some better ones. So that's definitely important, because one of the bigger, most difficult things when you want to move to a different continent and country and change your life is you basically lose most of your friends. One of the big lessons for me here is that I learned here living is that you you get this feeling that Argentinians are like way more like spontaneous, and they live like this sort of day by day. They don't really like look ahead too much. If they say they will do something in 2 weeks, it's like maybe they will do it, maybe not. Like the word is not as much important. Like if someone says, oh, I'll come in 3 days, maybe they will come in 5 or never. So I think they're way more like in the moment, but at the same time they're more like spontaneous, crazy. They're willing to like go on adventures and do. And I think partially it comes from this fact, this like necessity or adaptation of humans, that they've had this like crazy ride of a like economy for like 70 years basically, minimum. 30 years definitely, but 70 years basically of like up and down, huge ups and downs, and people are now way more used to it, but at the same time it sort of forced them to live this way, that, you know, compared to us Europeans, where in Europe since the, you know, end of Second World War and then maybe like 70s or whatever, and in the US the same, the 60s, 70s, it's been all stable, good, well, actually amazing, you know, like it's been the time of prosperity, stability. Our parents, our grandparents, they worked the same work for 20 years. They could plan, you know, 20 years in advance to buy a house, make a family, and to do all that kind of stuff and retire. Maybe in Poland a bit less time because you had communism, but we had like 30 years now of minimum of this kind of like stability, where people are sort of can live this life. So we are not really used to that kind of like wild rides, and they're way more used to it here. So I'm definitely adapting to the Argentinian ways. And my bold prediction actually for the future is, since I see that there's now the start, probably like last year too, probably the start of pandemic, and I think it's going to continue. It's a period of big instability, I think big economic changes. You can see now in the US it's also coming down hard, and the next year or so it's going to be probably even worse. Europe, huge inflation, the war in Ukraine, China taking over. So there's a lot of things I think coming, changing, like tectonic shifts. And my bold prediction is that actually here, South America, but definitely Argentina, is, I think, way more prepared for the uncertain and crazy times and the chaos that will happen. And I think they will recuperate faster, and then they will probably come up way more on top than a lot of countries. So I'm actually betting, sort of, in a way, of living here, I'm betting that I think actually here things are going to change for the better. Or even in a different way, that in a lot of other places they're going to change for worse. They already changed for worse, and they will continue changing for worse. And here it's going to either stay the same or get slightly better. Maybe there will be some huge changes here, like that will change it and radically improve. But even if not, I think my bet is that that they will, I think, handle it here way better, because they just used to it for so long here. That for them it's not like immediate portrays like, oh, Argentina is like so many people like starving to death, the economy, like violence. But I would say that's like, you can take it out of context. I would say like, money is tight. Some people are struggling, especially as I said, like if you live in like Buenos Aires and you're like living day by day. But for the most part, it's like life as usual here. Because life here is also, I think it's also because of the background of, like, if you learn some history of Argentina, one of the first, white people that came here when the Spanish conquered was basically developed the culture of gauchos, where this like lonely guys traveling horses, living a simple life with like a giggy guitar, making asados, like a barbecue, and moving from place to place, not working too much, and just kind of like troubadour life. So if you look at that, I see that there's a lot of like still in here that there's this like ability to live simply and still live happily, like just share some wine, some beer, sit down for a mate, sit down in a circle, talk some stories, just ask what's up, talk about like what's up with your life, what's up with my life, and all kinds of like simple life, people having like some great quality clothes for 20 years. So also that's another lesson. I think the culture of like consumerism and materialism that is in Europe and Western world and US and that part, it's like such a contrast to here. I think we're on such a different level, and I'm still from like Poland, Europe, which I think probably is way lower than like States, but the difference is stark, to be honest. Like how much more we like buy and throw things, and how much more we're about like money, fame, and like how much you have, what car do you drive, and all that kind of like show off stuff. Like I feel like in Poland for sure, and in other countries in Europe too, like matters way more. Like what watch do you have, what like suit do you wear to work, and here like there are people higher lower, but no one really gives a fuck to be honest. Like people ride like really 30-year-old or 40-year-old cars, and they wear like some 20, 15-year-old clothes, and they have really like simple small houses, and no one really cares, like I think it's like you never hear it like too much in a conversation, to be honest, about talking about stuff like that, like, oh, I want to have this, oh, I'm trying to save my money to buy a next car, or I need to like renovate my house and all that kind of shit. Or I need to buy a new pair of shoes, or I just bought new, I had these shoes, I threw them away, and I bought 5 more pairs. You don't have that, of course. I think probably in big city you will encounter that, but in general, if you consider that Argentina is also so spread out, so you have like a few big cities like Buenos Aires, Rosario, Cordoba, maybe Salta, Neuquén, and then the rest just lives in the camps. Camps, I mean, like in the small towns, pueblos, in small cities, like with houses and garden and cows. so that's like another large point to make. I think I'm learning this also big lesson that's I've been traveling, and I consider myself not like this shallow traveler of like going to hotel, but I think there's still something way different of like trying to really move somewhere and become part of their culture and become an Argentinian, for example, is way different than like even if you pass by for like 6 months and you like travel and you even stay with the locals, and it's like way different because I'm now going like way below the surface of like the history, why are some customs and why are people a certain way, and a lot of like custom traditions, even unspoken ones, and things people do, and why certain things happen, and understanding the politics and all the situation and the rhythm of life, and there's been a lot of times it's like, oh, where I get it, and then sometimes it's like, oh, you Polish, you don't understand anything. So I'm still definitely like far from it, but I think I'm starting to see in general that there's a different process, and it's beautiful. It's like this depth versus breadth. Like a lot of people, I think, we have this idea of like it's amazing if you know like all the countries in the world, but it's, I don't know if it's like that interesting at some point, like the numbers game. So what, you went for like a couple weeks or to all the countries, but what do you know actually about all these countries? You know, like the most beautiful place there is, or the most touristic place, or do you actually understand the culture? Do you have you really took time to understand the language, culture, music, art, history, all that stuff. And I think that's where the gold is, not like the nice mountain or nice Eiffel Tower or whatever else. I mean, because there's infinite number of beautiful places in the world, but I think to truly appreciate it, like, have to spend time. And I think also language is huge. I think there's just this hidden part of culture in the language. And even though here Spanish is like Argentinian Spanish, and in Cordoba there's like Cordobese Spanish. So I think that's also another lesson, that in Argentina, actually the provinces are much like more distinct. Well, maybe there's probably like some parts of the, like China or like some huge countries where it's true, like in States probably true, but for example in Poland or in Europe, I don't think it's as much of the case. Like probably like maybe in Spain in some places, but in Poland definitely not so much. Like you have the Górals, so like the mountain people, and then you have the rest of Poland. The rest you don't really see, like, the differences of like how people speak, music, traditions, customs. Here it's much more actually diverse, I would say. Like you can feel the difference in like the attitude, the language, with words people use, the accent. Cordobese, for example, is like a musical accent. I heard that it's because of the natives that live here, like the influence. But who knows? So they speak like with a certain cadence, and they use like funny words like culiado or things like that the rest don't really use. And then each province has like distinct ways and some small traditions and festivals and things that are from there, like some food too. Like north is much more, for example, native oriented, much more there's way more culture in the north, so that's where I'm going there. And then in south is more like stripped from the especially the indigenous culture, and it just was like replaced by all the Europeans, Germans, and Spanish and all the immigration that came here. Because Argentina, and that's also one of the lessons, is basically, I would say, that's a great for some people who would want to live here. I think it's a very immigrant open culture, like open-minded. Because I think it's because just the whole history of Argentina is filled with immigrants escaping wars or justice or other stuff from like Poland, Germany, Spain, Italy, Syria, even like from the Arab countries, like all kinds of places. Like there were different periods of time where there was like a war in the country, or war in general, like a Second World War, or war in Spain, or like in the Civil War, and then the Germans were, escaping to get like the justice, the generals, so they went to south of Argentina and Chile. So there's a lot of like just a history, like this all countries, like a mix of all cultures and explorers that came here, and then all the different as I said, immigrants. And so I would say it's very open, like people are all kinds of weird, all kinds of differences, and it's kind of normal here. So I would say there are some that it's like very, I don't know, more closed, it's, I think, harder. It's like just this culture there, and then you are the foreigner, so you have to like very adapt. I think here you can still like take a lot of your stuff and kind of mix and mash, because they're used to that. It's also there's like more interesting Argentina that it's a very like rock heavy country. I think most of the most famous bands or like most popular and famous songs are rock, like 80s, 90s. I don't know the full like story. I think it's just the fact that Buenos Aires was this kind of like second Paris, and it was like this a lot of like immigration from Europe, and they brought this over, and it just spread. But definitely, I think that's like partially very unique of Argentina, because I don't think there's other countries in South America that really listen and make rock. This is about making. I mean, they don't listen to really like American rock here. They make their own like Argentinian rock, and they made for many, many years. Especially as I said, like 80s, 90s was like a huge peak. So that's definitely something like unique about Argentina. And yeah, if you want to be like in tune, you have to like know. I've been listening to a lot of like the classic bands from here. So there's like Soda Stereo, you have there's Sumo, you have Patricio Rey, I don't remember, ricotta cheese. I think I have like Charlie Garcia. I have like 5 or maybe even 10 bands or singers that are really like huge. Oh yeah, like coming back to immigration, I think there's also a huge influence of like Italian culture here. I knew it, but I didn't realize. I think I started grasping the magnitude later, like how much like the kind of pasta, the way that they eat, the breakfast, like with like some sweet thing and coffee, and they say ciao, and so there's a lot of, I would say, like Italian, probably like the biggest influence of all, and because of the immigration that from Italy that came at a certain point, probably like the biggest of all. Or like 40 or 50%. I might be wrong, but I think something like that. He's from Italy, so there's here like pizza is big. I mean, pizza is big everywhere, but I think here, a lot of like ravioli, a lot of like food, and I think there's also like music. So tango and things like that are partially influenced from there, from Italy. Yeah, the way people speak. I think there's a lot of like Italian influence that I see. And what else is interesting? I think interesting also the holidays here is that there's like way more. I actually counted, so maybe it's not so way more. So for example, in Argentina there's 19 holidays compared to 13 in Poland. Only 6 difference, but I think the difference is basically, and I saw that the actual number of holidays is roughly the same, but here exists this kind of thing called like puente. So like Dia Puente, so it's like a bridge day. So if you have on like Thursday a free day, and then Friday you would have to go to work and maybe take a holiday in your work, and then to stay for the weekend, so like 4 days, the government in many of those instances like makes this like Friday free day too. So actually here, like I would say every month there's like some larger weekend, almost, I would say. So that's definitely interesting. I think the work culture is definitely less here. I think, yeah, in general, that's like a big picture about the culture. I think they put much less value on work in general. I think like in Europe and Poland and in States for sure, like work is like sort of your identity. Like, what do you do? It's like probably like the most important question, and how much you earn, and that kind of thing determines most. And you kind of feel like very like if you don't have work, or you like it doesn't give you the satisfaction or money or whatever, then your life sort of like crumbles. Like a lot of us feel like kind of meaningless there. Here they're less attached because a lot of people have like 3 different jobs or 3 different small businesses, or they also have a lot of like hobbies. They play instruments, they dance, or they do something and do some art. They have a lot of hobbies, so they're like way less attached, I would say, to like a single like path. Okay, I'm like a programmer, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a nurse, or I'm this. I would say it's like way more. I have like lots of identities. That's like, I think, Argentinian very much. Like I'm a guitarist, and I'm a freaking waiter, and I'm like a marketer and I'm I don't know, a painter at the same time, you know. So like, and then I play football and dance, and I don't know. So they don't really also feel like this kind of hopelessness. I've been trying to learn when they're like something goes wrong with their work, they kind of like, because of I think that they're not like, they don't have all their eggs in one basket. I think that also makes them more anti-fragile in a way to like, if they get fired or something goes wrong with their work, or they lost, like they lose satisfaction there, and then they have a lot of other sources what to do. Also because they're way more social, like the social aspect like fills a lot of their time. So they're not as reliant to just like work giving them everything they need, like all the, you know, purpose, satisfaction, money, security, relationships, also the work relationships. So I think that they're more like split. They're like, work is just like a small part of life. Where I think that, for example, in Poland, I don't know everywhere, but I think probably a lot of part in Europe is like way more like work is the central point, and then everything else is like this small part. And the last curious one is that I think almost everyone has a tattoo here, and so they're way more accepted. It's way more acceptable to have tattoo and weird tattoos, even than big tattoos on your face or your neck, or, well, I think there we are still more reserved. There's like people who have tattoo and people who don't. If you go to work, it's like more stigmatic if you have like a huge sleeve or something. I think here is way more acceptable to just kind of do whatever the hell you want with your body, like piercings, or, as I said, like tattoos, like everywhere. So definitely one of the big areas that I want to get better in and do more consistently is try to make videos like this, but also videos more like portraying the culture, because if videos like this was just like a reflection, so more on like me talking, but as far as like portraying the culture, the differences, similarities, what are some interesting things, what are customs, traditions, how people are, the energy. I think it's really hard to do just in words. You need like images and show like some specific experiences and situations. Well, definitely my area of growth for the next year and in general future is to just get better at that and do it like way more consistently too. I'll oftentimes get like stuck with like I record, but then I don't like edit and publish it. And I like overthink it, or I just procrastinate on it. What else? Next part is gonna be stabilizing the finances. So trying to basically, I've been pivoting, trying to do, maybe I'll try to do, so I've been trying some different approaches, like, yeah, like consulting and helping maybe people to get either marketing or maybe become a freelancer or figure out what they're good at and things of that nature. So yeah, I've been trying to pivot. So one of the big areas, definitely stabilize that part so I can have more freedom also about like, you know, sharing, and also buy some equipment and not worry as much about like what's coming in the next week. What else? And the biggest project for now, which I'm actually gonna start doing with my friend Ariel, I met here, who is from Argentina, from Mendoza, and we are gonna start trying to organize trips for the tourists or people who want to visit from like Europe and States, about like north of Argentina especially, so all the areas that are like less popular internationally and touristic, so not as much like Buenos Aires, Mendoza, and Patagonia, so the mountains, but more like, yeah, the north. So the idea is for now to go north for a couple of weeks, do videos, photos, get to know places, see what's great, what's actually not, contacts with people, and contacts to, you know, like accommodations, things like that. So then we can come back, make some pages, initial set, and then try to sell for this like spring and summer here. It's gonna come in like November, December, January, February, March. These are like the seasons in South America. So we want to be ready and try to sell this. Maybe also like just planning for people who want to go solo, but I don't know, they don't know anything. So we'll try different things, but want to try this to use my marketing skills and my kind of passion about like maybe showing people places, traveling, and the culture and history and just love for Argentina, and also using my English. So the fact that I know English and yeah, and try to connect. And Ariel has been traveling since 17 years old around Argentina, so he knows a lot. He's also the local, so, and he's like a painter and photographer, so he's gonna help with a lot of that part as well. So yeah, the idea is in 2 weeks we're gonna go north, do some stuff, then maybe another part of the north, and try to get ready in the next 2-3 months to sell. So that's the biggest one. And yeah, another small one is basically learn horse riding. So I went to my first like big horse riding trip now for 3 days. Incredible. Want to learn more horse riding, become Polish gaucho, learn more making asado. So that's, I haven't one yet. I've become really good at cooking, but asado, cooking beef, not so much because I didn't have many opportunities. Most of the time when you visit like Argentinian, the house man does the asado, so like the main head of the family. So, and I also, I was just kind of, at first I was observing. So for now I kind of get the point, but I need to just practice and fail way more times. It's a different way of cooking, that like cooking in your kitchen. And in Poland we don't really have the barbecue culture besides like sausages. So like cooking beef is a different animal. Literally and not. Yeah, and then definitely explore more Argentina. Get no more provinces, because for now Cordoba is my favorite, but see more. Potentially make San Marcos my base. I'm here. And potentially get a dog. That's where now are the big future-oriented elections are coming, I think, in October here, in September, like somewhere in the next few months in the country elections of president. So that's gonna be big. Now there are the elections of different provinces, of like different states people. So potentially some changes coming too here, also in like the economy, stability, politics, and things of that nature. So we will see how that's going. I'm pretty sure that cannot get really much worse as far as like stability, politically, economically. So probably I'm pretty optimistic about that. And yeah, I hope to see you, my friends, at some point, either there or here. If you want to come, let me know. Especially since I will be making trips, so I'll be ingrained in that world. And yeah, see you around in both real world or virtual social media. Thanks for watching this and reflections. 1 year in Argentina, stories and lessons learned and mistakes made. Have a beautiful rest of June and summer if you are in the northern part, and if you are here, then the rest of beautiful winter. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like what you see and you want to support this show, then make sure to subscribe and you will get notified about upcoming videos. Also, if you're interested to learn more about the quest for questions, or want to work with me on marketing strategy or your personal brand, then head over to konradyerba.com, and also there you will find that you can download my book on email marketing and B2B marketing strategy called The Art of War on the Inbox. And in the meantime, let Yerba be with you.